Stand behind me.
Reality collapsed, and instead of dying, it stopped. Not because of alien power, but because a human stepped forward and grabbed the impossible with bare hands. What happened next rewrote how the galaxy understands strength. Before we begin, tell me where you're watching from, and subscribe to help this channel grow. Now, let's start the story. Ethan Rowe arrived at Red Mesa facility the same way he had for 3 years. 10 minutes early, coffee in hand, resignation in his bones. The Arizona desert stretched endlessly beyond the reinforced walls, red rock formations catching the first light of dawn. Beautiful in a way that made you forget what happened inside these walls. That was probably intentional. He scanned his badge at the entrance. The system chirped twice. Standard for someone with his clearance level. Standard for someone who had survived what he survived. The guard nodded without looking up. They never did anymore. Inside, the facility hummed with the kind of quiet that preceded disasters. Sterile corridors, observation windows made of materials that could withstand dimensional tears, emergency protocols painted on every wall in 12 languages, 5 of them not human. Ethan walked past Lab 7 without glancing inside. 3 years ago, that room had taught him what alien blood looked like when it boiled from the inside out, what screaming sounded like when it came from species without vocal cords, what failure tasted like when you were the only one who walked out. His hands flexed unconsciously, old scars, new pain. The knuckles on his left hand sat wrong, crooked from breaks that healed without proper setting. He had been holding something he should not have been able to hold. He had survived something that killed 3 trained technicians. Nobody knew why. That made him useful in the worst possible way. He reached Containment Wing C and stopped. Through the observation glass, he could see her. Maris Kale worked alone, as always. The Illyrna Sorceress moved through her calibrations with mechanical precision. Her skin held that peculiar golden undertone that made her species look like they were lit from within. Amber eyes tracked probability fields invisible to human perception. Her hands moved in patterns that bent light at the edges.
She was, objectively, the most powerful being in the facility. She was also, Ethan had noticed, completely isolated. Their paths crossed exactly twice per shift. Morning handoff, evening report. 4 sentences between them, maximum. Professional, cold, safe. She glanced up as he approached. For exactly 1 second, her eyes met his. Something flickered there. Recognition. Curiosity.
It was gone before he could name it. He nodded. She returned to her work. Standard. Ethan moved to the monitoring station and began his rounds. Containment fields stable. Probability matrices within acceptable variance. Energy signatures nominal. It was, by all measures, a perfectly boring Tuesday. His tablet pinged. Minor fluctuation in Sector 101. Nothing critical, but protocol demanded inspection. He stood, grabbed his kit, and headed for the adjacent lab without hesitation. Behind the glass, Maris watched him go. Her hands paused mid-gesture. She had seen humans react to danger before. They ran. They hesitated. They called for backup. This one just walked toward it. Curious. Ethan cleared the fluctuation in 4 minutes, loose coupling in a containment array. Fixed it with a wrench and electrical tape. The universe did not care about your fancy probability manipulation if your equipment was not properly grounded. He returned to find Maris still watching. Their eyes met again. This time she did not look away immediately. He raised an eyebrow. She tilted her head just slightly. Almost a question. Then her console beeped. Her entire posture changed. The careful control she maintained every moment cracked, just for a second. She touched the screen, and her face went very, very still. On the display, Ethan could see what looked like news footage from her homeworld. Crowds, fire, the kind of chaos that preceded regime change. Maris stared at the screen for exactly 10 seconds. Then she closed it and returned to her work as if nothing had happened. But her hands were shaking. Ethan looked down at his own scarred hands and made a decision he would not be able to explain later. He stayed. Maris had learned to control her power before she learned to speak. Control was everything. Control was survival. Control was the difference between being respected and being destroyed. She was losing control. The transmission from Illyria played in her mind on repeat. Political collapse, economic failure, social unrest, and somehow, impossibly, her name attached to it all. She had been gone for 2 years. How could any of this be her fault? But fault did not matter. Perception did, and the perception was clear. Maris Kale, powerful sorceress, had abandoned her people when they needed her most. The scheduled experiment was in 20 minutes. She should abort. Protocol was clear about emotional contamination during probability manipulation, but aborting would require explaining why, and explaining would require admitting weakness, and weakness was unacceptable. She would proceed. She had done this exercise 1,000 times. She could maintain control for another hour. Then she would figure out what to do about the rest of her life. Technicians filed into the observation deck. 3 humans, 2 Illyria junior researchers. Standard complement for a Class 3 stabilization test. They checked their instruments, verified the safety protocols, exchanged the kind of casual conversation that came before routine procedures. In the corner, Ethan Rowe stood near the emergency exit. Not at a station, not checking anything, just present, watching her. Maris found that more unsettling than she wanted to admit. She began the sequence. Her hands moved through the practiced gestures, pulling probability threads from the quantum foam. Reality was not fixed. It was negotiable. She just needed to convince it to agree with her. The first 3 matrices formed perfectly, elegant, clean, exactly as they should be. Then the air started to vibrate. It was subtle at first, just a feeling of wrongness, like the moment before a migraine. Then objects on the nearest table began to drift upward, not flying, floating, as if gravity had become optional. One of the technicians noticed. "Dr. Kale, energy readings are spiking." "I'm aware." Her voice remained steady even as her heart raced. This was controllable. Everything was controllable if you just maintained focus. She tried to collapse the field. It expanded instead. "Protocol suggests we abort." Another tech, more urgent now. "I said I am aware." The vibration intensified. Probability waves cascading out of sync. She could feel each one. A discordant note in a symphony she was supposed to be conducting. The more she tried to force them into harmony, the worse they became. The feedback was emotional. She knew that intellectually. Her distress was feeding the field, and the field was amplifying her distress. A spiral, predictable, solvable. If she could just stop feeling. An alarm began to wail. Not the energy detector, the chaos indicator. The one that measured how much reality was deviating from expected parameters. Objects were moving erratically now. A tablet spun through the air. A chair scraped across the floor. The very walls seemed to pulse. Maris raised her hands to contain the cascade. The gesture was automatic, trained into muscle memory through decades of practice. The field exploded outward. She felt it happen, felt her control shatter like glass, felt the power she had spent her entire life mastering turn on her like a wild animal. 5 meters. The probability field had a 5-meter radius now and was growing. Anyone caught inside would experience causality breakdown. Their nervous systems would try to process all possible outcomes simultaneously. It would kill them. She could see the technicians backing away, could hear someone shouting evacuation orders, could feel the weight of her failure crushing her from the inside out. "Everyone out!" her voice cracked. Not commanding, begging. "Get away from me, now!" They ran. Everyone ran, except one. Through the chaos, through the distortion in the air, through her own mounting panic, she saw Ethan Rowe walking toward her. Not running, walking. Steady, calm, directly into the expanding field. "No!" The word tore from her throat. "If you touch this, you will die. Do you understand me? You will die." He stopped exactly 1 meter away, close enough that the field was pulling at his clothes, close enough that she could see his eyes clearly. Brown, tired, completely unafraid. And then he spoke, in a voice that somehow cut through the screaming alarms. "Stand behind me!" Maris did not understand. The human was standing in front of her, between her and the door, between her and safety. His back to the exit, facing the field that was about to kill them both. "Stand behind me," he had said, as if that made any sense, as if he could protect her from something she had created, as if a human could survive what would kill even her own species. "You do not understand what this is," she tried to explain, but her voice was shaking. "This is not fire. This is not radiation. This is causality collapse. Your mind will try to exist in every possible state at once and—" Ethan Rowe removed his jacket, rolled up his sleeves, and placed his bare hands directly into the active probability field. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. That should have been impossible. The field should have reacted instantly, should have torn through his nervous system, should have scattered his consciousness across infinite branches of reality. Instead, it just stopped growing. The chaotic expansion stabilized, not collapsed, not controlled. Just frozen in a state of impossible equilibrium, as if the universe itself was confused about what to do with this man. Then the pain hit him. Maris watched his face contort, watched blood begin to seep from his palms where the field was burning through skin, watched every muscle in his arms lock tight as his body tried to process forces that should not exist. He made a sound, not a scream, more like a grunt of pure effort, the kind that came from lifting something far too heavy for far too long. But he did not let go. "What are you?" The question escaped before she could stop it. Horror and fascination warring in her chest. "Human." He got the word out through clenched teeth. "Now stop fighting it." "I am not." "Yes, you are." Blood was running down his wrists now. "You are trying to control it." "Do not. Just let it pass through me." That was insane. The field was not a river. It was not something you could channel. It was raw probability, chaos given form. You controlled it or it destroyed you. Those were the only options. Except apparently there was a third option she had never considered. Acceptance. She looked at this human, this ordinary maintenance worker with his scarred hands and his ridiculous calm, and she made a choice that violated every principle of her training. She loosened her grip. The field surged. She felt it rush toward Ethan like water finding a drain. Felt him absorb the impact. Felt his body shudder with the strain of it, and felt the field begin to dissipate. Not because he was controlling it, because he was not trying to. His mind was not fighting the probability waves, was not attempting to impose order, was not demanding that reality make sense. He was just enduring. The human brain, she realized with shock, was not trying to calculate outcomes. It was not trying to optimize. It was just accepting the pain, the uncertainty, the fundamental unfairness of the situation. And somehow, impossibly, that was exactly what the field could not predict. "Trust me." His voice was barely a whisper now, hoarse with pain. "Please, Maris, just trust me." It was the first time he had ever said her name. She released her hold completely. The field roared through Ethan like a storm. His knees buckled. Blood was running freely now, not just from his hands but from his nose. The forces tearing through him should have stopped his heart, but he held on, and the field collapsed. Not explosively, not dramatically. It just faded, like a wave returning to the ocean, leaving nothing behind but silence and the smell of burnt flesh. Ethan swayed. Maris caught him before he hit the ground. He was heavy, heavier than she expected, solid and real and impossibly warm in her arms. She lowered him carefully, cradling his head, staring at his ruined hands. His eyes fluttered open, focused on her face. "Told you," he managed. "Stand behind me." Then he passed out. Somewhere in the distance she could hear people running back into the lab, hear the supervisor shouting for medical, hear the chaos that followed any major incident. But all she could focus on was the human in her arms, the impossible human who had just done something that should not have been possible, who had saved everyone, who had saved her. And she still did not understand why. The medical wing smelled like antiseptic and questions nobody wanted to answer. Ethan woke up to white ceiling tiles and the kind of pain that suggested his body was filing a formal complaint about recent management decisions. His hands were wrapped in bandages that went halfway up his forearms. Even through the medication, he could feel the damage. The door opened without warning. Maris Kale entered like she owned the room, which was strange because she had never broken protocol before. Visiting hours had rules. Medical privacy had rules. The Illyria lived and died by rules. Except apparently right now. She stopped at the foot of his bed, staring at his bandaged hands with an expression he could not quite read. Horror, maybe, or guilt. "You are awake." Statement, not question. Mostly, he tried for a smile. It probably looked more like a grimace. "What is the damage?" "Second and third degree burns across both palms. Nerve damage, possible permanent reduction in fine motor control." She recited it like a medical report. Detached, professional. "The doctors do not understand how you are alive." "Yeah, that seems to be my thing." She did not laugh, just kept staring at his hands. "Why did you do it?" The question hung in the air between them. Ethan considered several answers. Because it was his job, because someone had to, because he had survived worse and maybe that meant something. "Seemed like the right thing to do," he said finally. "That is not an answer. It is the only one I have." Before she could respond, the door burst open again. 3 scientists in lab coats, tablets in hand, excitement barely contained. "Mr. Rowe, if you are feeling up to it, we would love to run some tests. What you did was theoretically impossible, and we need to understand." "Out!" Maris did not raise her voice. Did not need to. Something in her tone made it very clear that this was not a suggestion. The scientists looked at each other, then at her, then retreated without another word. The door closed. Silence returned. Mayeris pulled up a chair, sat down. Her hands were folded in her lap, perfectly composed, but he noticed they were trembling slightly. "I need to explain what you touched," she said, "what my people can do." So she told him about probability manipulation, about the Illyria gift for bending causality, about how their minds could reach into the quantum foam and convince reality to choose different paths, about how that power grew stronger with emotion, which was exactly why emotion had to be suppressed. "We train from childhood," she explained. "Control is everything. A sorceress who cannot control her power is worse than useless. She is dangerous." "You did not seem dangerous. You seemed scared." Her jaw tightened. "Fear is weakness. Fear is normal. Not for us." Ethan shifted, trying to sit up more. His hands screamed in protest, but he managed. 3 years ago, I was in Lab 7 when a containment field failed. 3 alien technicians died. I did not. Nobody knows why. I asked for this transfer. Maybe to understand. Maybe to... He trailed off. "To what?" To pay some kind of debt, I guess. For being the one who lived." Maris was silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was different, softer. "You did not owe me anything. You should not have risked yourself for..." "Stop," he cut her off. "You do not get to tell me what I should or should not do with my own life." Their eyes met. Something passed between them, an understanding, or maybe just recognition that they were both carrying weight nobody else could see. An Illyria nurse appeared at the door with medication. She took one look at the situation and tried to hand Ethan the cup. His bandaged hands could not grip it. Without a word, Maris took the cup and held it to his lips. The moment was absurdly intimate. Her hand steady, his throat working to swallow, both of them acutely aware of how close they were. "This is humiliating," he muttered. "Drink your medicine." He did. She set the cup aside but did not move back to her chair. "The facility director wants to remove me from the project," she said quietly, "for safety concerns." That is stupid. Is it? I nearly killed everyone in that lab. But you did not. We did not. She looked at him, really looked at him. We, before he could answer, the door opened again. The facility supervisor. Official expression. Bad news incoming. Dr. Kyle, I need to speak with you about your continued assignment to Red Mesa. Maris stood, turned to face him, and for just a second before she walked out, she looked back at Ethan with something that might have been regret. The door closed behind them. Ethan stared at his bandaged hands and wondered what he had just started. Maris Kyle did not do defiance. She did logic. She did careful calculation. She did whatever was necessary to maintain control. So naturally, she walked into the director's office and threatened to quit. If you remove me from this project, I will resign from Red Mesa entirely. I will also file a formal report with the Galactic Research Council about safety protocol failures that led to the incident. It was a bluff, mostly, but the director did not need to know that. They reached a compromise. She could stay if she developed a containment protocol that did not rely solely on individual control, something reproducible, something that could be taught, something involving Ethan Rowe, whether he liked it or not. He did not like it. The medical board had not even cleared him for light duty yet. His hands were still bandaged. His motor control was still compromised. He showed up anyway. "You were supposed to be resting," Maris said when she found him in the observation deck, reviewing field data with his tablet balanced awkwardly against his chest. "I am resting." He nodded at the chair he was sitting in. "See? Resting." "That is not what resting means. You threatened to quit for me. Least I can do is show up." She felt something warm in her chest, something she did not have a name for. "I threatened to quit for science. You were incidental." "Right, science." He grinned. It was the first real smile she had seen from him. She almost smiled back. They ran the first controlled test 3 days later. Small scale. Minimal power. Ethan standing 2 meters away, just in case. Maris created a simple probability field. Nothing fancy, just a localized causality bubble that made a coin land on its edge instead of heads or tails. Ethan reported feeling nothing. The field remained stable. Everything proceeded exactly as planned. They tried again with slightly more power, then again, then again. Every test successful. Every theory confirmed. The human presence did not prevent probability manipulation. It anchored it, gave it something to reference that was not trying to impose order. By the end of the week, they had enough data to write a preliminary report, a new protocol, proof of concept for human-Illyrna collaborative containment. They celebrated with terrible coffee from the break room. "This tastes like someone dissolved a tire in warm water," Ethan observed. "I have had worse." "Really?" "No. I was trying to make you feel better about your species' beverages." He laughed. Actually laughed. The sound was rusty, like he did not do it often. But it was genuine. Maris found herself laughing too. When was the last time she had done that? Then she noticed his hands. He was doing some kind of exercise, trying to make his fingers curl into a fist. They barely moved. The tremor was worse than yesterday. The laughter died in her throat. "It is getting worse," she said. "It is fine. Do not lie to me." He set down his coffee, looked at his hands, at the scars visible beneath the fading bandages. "Yeah, probably not getting better, but it was worth it." "How can you know that?" He looked up at her. "Because you are still here." The words landed like a physical thing, heavy and solid and impossible to ignore. She opened her mouth to respond, to say what she did not know. Maybe thank you. Maybe I am sorry. Maybe something that explained the feeling growing in her chest that had nothing to do with probability fields. Her tablet beeped. Message from Illyrna, marked urgent. She read it, felt the ground drop out from under her. The political situation had not improved. It had gotten worse. The council was now directly accusing her of abandoning her post during a crisis. of prioritizing alien research over her own people. They were demanding she return immediately, or face permanent exile. She had 48 hours to decide. Ethan was watching her. "What is it?" She told him. Everything. The accusations, the deadline, the choice. He was quiet for a long time. Then he just nodded. "You should go." "What?" "If your people need you, you should go. The protocol can wait." She stared at him, at this human who had nearly destroyed his hands for her, who had helped her build something that might actually change how their species worked together, who was now telling her to leave. "Just like that?" Her voice came out sharper than she intended. "Just like that?" She wanted to argue, wanted to point out all the reasons she should stay, wanted to ask if he meant it or if he was just being noble. Instead, she picked up her tablet and walked out before she said something she could not take back. Behind her, Ethan sat alone with his coffee and his broken hands, wondering why doing the right thing had to hurt so much. Ethan found her on the roof. He was not supposed to be up there. Technically, nobody was, but rules seemed less important when someone was about to make a decision that would define the rest of their life. Maris stood at the edge, looking out over the Sedona desert. The sunset painted the rock formations in impossible colors, red bleeding into orange, bleeding into purple, beautiful in a way that made you believe in something bigger than yourself. She did not turn when he approached, just spoke to the desert. "My people believe that emotion is weakness. That control is the only virtue that matters. Do you know why?" "No. Because when we were younger as a species, sorceresses who lost control destroyed entire cities. Thousands dead in moments because someone felt too much. So we built a culture around suppression, around perfect discipline, around the idea that feeling is failing." Ethan stood beside her. Not too close, just present. "They train us from childhood," she continued. Her voice was eerily calm. "Punish us for crying, for laughing too loud, for any display of authentic emotion. By the time we are old enough to manipulate probability, we have learned to feel nothing at all." "That sounds lonely." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Lonely is safe. Lonely means I do not lose control and kill everyone around me." "Except you did not kill anyone. I was there, remember?" "Because you stopped me." "No, because we stopped it together." She shook her head. "That is not how my people will see it. They have been watching. The incident was recorded, transmitted. By now, everyone on Illyria knows that I lost control, that I needed a human to save me. Then they know you succeeded. With help, but you succeeded. You do not understand. Power without control is not just failure. It is moral failure. It is proof that you are not strong enough, not disciplined enough, not worthy." For the first time, she turned to look at him. There were no tears. The Illyria did not cry, but her eyes held something worse than sadness. They held resignation. "The council gave me an ultimatum. Return within 48 hours and face discipline, or stay here and be formally exiled, stripped of my credentials, cut off from my family, my world, everything. So what are you going to do?" "I am going back." She said it simply, statement of fact. "I always knew I would. This research, this work, it was temporary. I was always going to go home eventually." Something broke in Ethan's chest. He was not sure what. Something he had not known was whole to begin with. "Then why did you let me?" He stopped, took a breath, started again. "Why did you fight to stay if you were just going to leave?" "I do not know." "That is a lie." Her jaw tightened. "Perhaps, but it is the lie I need right now." He wanted to argue, wanted to point out that she had built something here, that the protocol mattered, that walking away now would waste everything they had accomplished, that he did not want her to go, but none of that was his decision to make. "When do you leave?" he asked instead. "Tomorrow night. The transport leaves at 2100. Then I guess this is goodbye. I suppose it is. They stood there in silence as the sun continued its descent. Two people from different worlds, having run out of words in exactly the same language. Finally, Ethan turned to go. He made it 3 steps before he stopped. "For what it is worth," he said without looking back, "I do not think you failed. I think you were brave enough to try something new, and I think your people are wrong about what strength means." He left her there, silhouetted against the dying light. Maris watched him go, watched the door close behind him. Then she did something she had not done since she was 6 years old, and learned what happened to children who could not control themselves. She cried, not loud, not dramatically, just quiet tears running down her face while she stood alone on a roof in the Arizona desert, trying to convince herself she was making the right choice. Behind her, the sun finished setting. Tomorrow, she would go home. Tonight, she was allowed to grieve for what she was leaving behind. 24 hours until departure. Ethan worked a double shift, then a triple. Anything to avoid thinking about the fact that tomorrow night, Maris Kale would be gone, and the facility would go back to being exactly what it was before. A place where he showed up, did his job, and went home without mattering to anyone. He was calibrating a containment array in Sector 12 when he heard footsteps behind him. "You have been avoiding me." Maris, of course. Who else would track him down in the least accessible part of the facility? "Been busy. You are always busy. Today you are hiding." He did not turn around, just kept working with his damaged hands, moving slower than he used to, but getting it done. Nothing to hide from. "You made your choice. I respect that." "Do you?" Now he turned. She was standing there in her standard research clothes, hair pulled back, expression carefully neutral, but her eyes gave her away. She looked as tired as he felt. "What do you want me to say, Maris? That I think you should stay? That would be selfish. That I understand why you have to go? That would be a lie. So yeah, I am avoiding you. Because I do not trust myself to say the right thing." She stepped closer. "What if I do not want you to say the right thing? What if I just want you to be honest?" "You want honesty? Fine. I think you are making a mistake. I think you are going back to a place that will punish you for being human enough to feel something. I think you deserve better than that. But it is not my decision to make. So yes, I am avoiding you. Because watching you leave is going to hurt, and I would rather hurt alone." The words hung between them, raw and unfair, and true. Maris opened her mouth to respond. The alarm cut through the moment like a blade. Not the standard proximity alert, the emergency klaxon. The one that meant something had gone catastrophically wrong. They ran. The incident was in Containment Lab 4. Another Illyrna researcher, younger, attempting a stabilization exercise. Routine procedure. Should have been safe. Except the human anchor they had assigned had never worked with probability fields before. Had been given minimal training. Had panicked when the field grew unstable. The supervisor had tried to replicate Ethan's success on a budget, with predictable results. The human anchor had been thrown across the room. Unconscious. Maybe dead. The Illyrna Sorceress was in full cascade. Field expanding. Reality fracturing at the edges. And unlike Maris, this one was not trying to maintain control. She was too scared, too overwhelmed. Just raw power spiraling out in every direction. The field was already at 10 meters. Growing fast. Evacuation protocols were in effect. Everyone running. Everyone except the unconscious human and the terrified sorceress who could not stop what she had started. Maris did not hesitate. She ran toward the field, already forming counter patterns with her hands. Ethan grabbed her arm. "What are you doing?" "Someone has to contain this before it tears through the facility. You cannot go in there alone. If you lose control, then we all die anyway." She pulled free. "This is what I was trained for." She entered the field. Ethan watched from the observation window as she approached the other sorceress. Watched probability waves crash against probability waves. Watched Maris try to talk the younger woman down, try to help her regain control. It was not working. The fields were interfering, making everything worse. He looked at his hands, at the scars, at the tremor that never quite went away. He thought about tomorrow, about Maris leaving, about going back to a life where nothing he did mattered. Then he thought about right now, about someone who needed help, about the only thing he had ever been good at. He walked to the access door. The supervisor saw him. "Ro, stand down. Your hands are not healed. If you enter that field in your condition..." Ethan opened the door, stepped through. The field hit him like a physical force. Worse than before, stronger, more chaotic. His hands screamed in protest, barely functional nerve damage lighting up like fire. But he kept walking. Maris saw him coming. Her eyes went wide with horror. "No! Ethan, your hands cannot take this! You will never use them again!" He reached her side, looked at the other sorceress, seeing his own fear reflected in her eyes. Then he did what he always did. He reached out and touched the field with his bare hands. The pain was indescribable, like holding lightning, like gripping broken glass, like every worst thing he had ever felt compressed into a single moment. But the field stopped growing. "I have got you," he said to the terrified Illyrna. "Both of you. Just breathe. Just let it go. I can hold this." Maris stared at him. At this impossible human who just kept choosing pain if it meant helping someone else. "Together," she said. "Together," he agreed. They worked in sync. Maris guiding the probability waves, Ethan anchoring them, the younger sorceress slowly, carefully releasing her grip on power she could not control. The field began to collapse. Then Ethan's legs gave out. He fell. Maris caught him. They hit the ground together, the field finally dispersing around them like morning mist. In the observation deck, alarms fell silent. Medical teams rushed in. But all Maris could see was Ethan, unconscious in her arms again, blood seeping through the bandages on his hands. Still breathing, still impossibly, stubbornly alive. "You absolute fool," she whispered, and knew with complete certainty that she could not leave him. The field was not collapsing. It should have. With the younger sorceress unconscious and Ethan barely holding on, there should have been nothing left to sustain it. But probability manipulation did not always follow logic. Sometimes it took on momentum. Sometimes it became something bigger than what created it. This was one of those times. Maris could feel it. The field was feeding on residual emotional energy, fear, panic, the desperate hope that everyone would be okay. It was growing again, slower than before, but steady. They had maybe 30 minutes before it reached critical mass. After that, reality itself would start to fracture. The facility could not be evacuated in 30 minutes. She looked down at Ethan, still unconscious. His hands were worse than before. The bandages were soaked through with blood. The medical team had given him something for the pain, but even sedated, he was shaking. A doctor approached, young, human, terrified but trying not to show it. "Dr. Coyle, we need to get him out of here. The damage to his hands is extensive. If we do not start treatment immediately, he might lose function permanently." "I know." "Then please, let us take him to medical." Maris looked at the field, at the slow, inevitable expansion, at the 100 people who would die if she could not find a way to stop it. Then she looked at Ethan. He would hate her for what she was about to do. "Wake him up," she said. "What?" "No, he needs..." "I said wake him up. We do not have time for this." The doctor stared at her, then at the field. Understanding dawned. "You cannot be serious. He cannot survive another exposure. His nervous system is barely holding together as it is." "Then we make sure he does not have to do it alone." She had a plan, barely. More of a desperate theory than anything else. But it was all she had. If she could enter the field and establish a resonance pattern, she could guide the probability waves, not control them, just give them direction. But she would need an anchor, someone to ground the pattern, someone whose mind would not try to impose order, someone like Ethan. They woke him with a stimulant shot that probably took a year off his life. His eyes opened, unfocused at first, then sharpening as he recognized where he was. "The field," he croaked. "Still active. Growing. We need to go back in." He tried to sit up, failed, tried again. This time he made it, though his face went gray with the effort. "My hands are damaged, possibly beyond repair. I know, I am sorry." He looked at them, at the blood-soaked bandages, at the fingers that barely responded when he tried to move them. Then he looked at her. "What do you need me to do?" And that was it. No argument, no accusation, no pointing out that she was the reason he was in this mess to begin with. Just immediate, unconditional willingness to help. Something inside her chest cracked open. "I need you to trust me," she said, "completely. We are going to enter the field together. I am going to guide it. You are going to anchor it. And we are going to hope that two people working in perfect sync can do what one person could not." Sounds dangerous? It is almost certainly fatal. "Cool. When do we start?" Despite everything, she almost laughed. "You are insane." "Yeah, probably. But I am your kind of insane, so let us do this." The supervisor tried to stop them. Regulations, protocols, liability, all the reasonable objections to an unreasonable plan. Maris sealed the lab door with a probability lock. The first time she had ever used her power in anger. It felt good. They walked to the edge of the field. Ethan's legs were unsteady. Maris supported him, her arm around his waist, his weight against her side. At the threshold, they stopped. "If this does not work," she started. "It will work. You do not know that." "No, but I know you, and I know me, and I know that together we can do impossible things. So stop thinking and start trusting." She looked at him, really looked at him. This broken, stubborn, impossible human who had somehow become the most important person in her world. Why? The question escaped before she could stop it. "Why do you keep saving me?" He smiled, tired and pained but genuine. "Because someone should. Because you deserve it. Because when I am with you, I actually feel like my life means something." "Ethan, and because I love you, you stubborn alien. So can we please go save everyone now and have the awkward conversation later?" She stared at him. He had just said he loved her, in the middle of a crisis, while bleeding and possibly dying. Of course he had. "Later," she agreed. "We talk later." "Deal." They stepped into the field together. Reality twisted around them. Time felt wrong. Space felt negotiable. Every atom in Maris's body screamed that this was not how physics worked. But Ethan was beside her, solid and real and absurdly calm. "Okay," he said. "Tell me what to do." And she did. Inside the field, everything was wrong. Ethan could see in directions that should not exist, could feel emotions that were not his, could hear Maris's thoughts like they were being whispered directly into his brain. Terror, determination, something that might have been hope if hope came wrapped in desperation. And underneath it all, a feeling he recognized because it matched the one in his own chest. She loved him too. "I can hear you," he said, or thought, or somehow communicated in this space where communication was not bound by normal rules. "I know." Her voice was everywhere and nowhere. "The field connects us. I need you to hold on. This is going to hurt." "More than it already does?" "Yes." "Great. Love what you have done with the place." Even here, even now, he could feel her almost laugh. Relief that he was still himself, still making terrible jokes in terrible situations. Then the pain started. Maris was pulling probability threads, weaving them into patterns, trying to create order from chaos. Each thread passed through Ethan first, through his mind, through his body, through everything he was. It felt like being unmade and remade 1,000 times per second. But he held on. Because that was what he did. That was what he had always done. He was not the strongest, not the smartest, not the most important. But he could endure. The field began to respond. Not collapsing, but organizing. Finding structure. Maris was not controlling it. She was conversing with it, asking instead of demanding, suggesting instead of forcing. And it was working. Then the younger sorceress woke up. Maris felt it. The sudden surge of panicked consciousness. The girl was still inside the field's influence, and her fear was fuel. The field exploded outward. "Ethan!" Maris's mental voice was sharp with fear. "I have got it!" He did not, but he pretended he did, and sometimes that was enough. He spread his awareness wider, tried to hold more of the field. His body was screaming. His hands were not hands anymore, just sources of agony. Blood was running from his nose, from his ears. But he held. Maris pivoted, started weaving a new pattern, one that would calm the girl, soothe the panic. But to reach her, she would have to let go of some of the containment she was maintaining. She would have to trust Ethan to hold it. "Do it," he said before she could ask. She did. The weight of the field crashed into him. It was too much. He knew it was too much. No human could hold this. No human should even be conscious right now. But the thing about Ethan Rowe was that he had never been very good at knowing when to quit. Maris reached the younger sorceress, wrapped her in calming patterns, showed her that she was not alone, that help was here, that she could let go. The girl released her grip. Half the field dissipated immediately. The other half was still channeling through Ethan. Maris spun back to him, saw what the field was doing, saw him holding forces that should have torn him apart. "Let go," she commanded. "I can handle the rest." "Not alone," he managed. "Ethan, you will die. Then I die. But not before I know you are safe." She wanted to scream at him, wanted to force him to release it, wanted to do anything except watch him sacrifice himself for her. Instead, she made a different choice. She stopped trying to control the field. She joined him in it. Let the probability waves flow through her the way they flowed through him. Not as a sorceress directing power, as a person accepting it. The field responded. It recognized synchronization, two minds moving as one, two people who had stopped fighting each other and started fighting together. The waves began to harmonize. Mayuris wove, Ethan anchored. Together, they convinced the field to let go, not through force, through invitation. The field collapsed like a sigh. Ethan fell. This time Maris was ready. She caught him, lowered them both to the ground, held him while medical teams rushed in. "You did it," he whispered. His eyes were closed. Blood was everywhere. But he was smiling. "Knew you could." "We did it," she corrected. "Yeah, we—" His eyes flickered open, found hers. "You staying?" "Yes." "Good." The smile widened. "Saved you a seat behind me." Then he passed out. The medics swarmed, stabilizing, treating, doing everything they could to save the human who should not have survived, but Maris stayed right where she was, holding him, covered in his blood, promising silently that if he lived, she would make sure he never regretted saving her. Outside the field, the facility was intact. Everyone was safe. Inside, two people had just proved that impossible was negotiable, and humanity had once again said, "Watch me." 3 days later, Ethan Rowe woke up to soft light and the smell of antiseptic. Again. He was starting to think the medical wing should just give him a permanent room, maybe a nameplate. Maris was sitting in the chair beside his bed. She looked like she had not slept in 3 days. Knowing her, she probably had not. "You are awake." Relief flooded her face. "Mostly." His voice was rough. "What is the damage this time?" She did not sugarcoat it. Permanent nerve damage in both hands. Reduced fine motor control. Chronic pain. probability-induced migraines that will probably last the rest of your life. So I am a mess. You are alive. Against all medical logic and several laws of physics, you are alive." He managed a weak smile. "See? Still got it." A doctor entered, human, older, looking at Ethan like he was a particularly interesting puzzle. "Mr. Rowe, you are officially the luckiest or stupidest person in the galaxy, possibly both. Heard that before? I imagine you will hear it again. Your hands will never fully recover. You will need ongoing physical therapy, but you will regain about 70% function. Enough to work, enough to live a normal life. Define normal. For you? I have no idea. Try not to touch any more probability fields." The doctor left. Silence settled over the room. Ethan looked at his hands. They were bandaged again, but he could feel the difference, the stiffness, the constant low hum of pain. He would never play piano, never do delicate work, never have hands that just did what he asked them to do without complaint. He found that he did not care. "Worth it," he said quietly. "How can you possibly think that?" Maris's voice cracked. "You destroyed your hands, your health, your future. For what? For me? That is not fair. That is not—" He reached out, touched her face with trembling, bandaged fingers. She froze. "For you," he confirmed. "For the people in that facility. For the chance to do something that mattered? Yeah, I would make the same choice every single time." "You are impossible." "You keep saying that?" "Because you keep being impossible." She took his hand, carefully, like it was precious. "I sent a message to the council," she said. "Told them I am staying on Earth, permanently." "Maris, they offered to take me back, as a hero actually. The data from our field integration went viral. Apparently what we did has never been documented before. They want to study it, replicate it. I could have gone home with honors." "Why did you not?" She looked at him, really looked at him. "Because home is not a place. It is a choice, and I choose here. I choose this work. I choose—" "Me," he offered. "You. I choose you, even though you are stubborn and self-destructive and make terrible coffee. The coffee is not my fault. That is a species-wide failing. I know. I am willing to overlook it." He laughed, then groaned because laughing hurt. A message alert beeped. Maris checked her tablet. Her expression shifted to something Ethan could not quite read. The council approved a new program, Human Illyria Collaborative Containment. They want to train teams, develop protocols. Red Mesa is being designated as the primary research facility. That is good. They want us to lead it, both of us. Ethan blinked. "Me? I am not a scientist. I am barely a maintenance worker at this point." "You are the only human who has successfully anchored multiple probability fields and lived. That makes you invaluable. Also, you are apparently very good at telling sorceresses when they are being stupid. It is a gift." She smiled. Actually smiled. The real kind that reached her eyes. "There is more. The younger sorceress from the incident. She wants to stay too, work with us. She said seeing you walk into that field changed how she understands power, made her think maybe needing help is not weakness. Smart kid. There are others. 3 more Illyria researchers volunteered for the program, and the facility has applications from 12 humans willing to train as anchors, people who want to help. Because of what you did." Ethan took that in, tried to process it, failed. "I just did what needed doing," he said finally. "Exactly. And now others want to learn how." 6 months later, Red Mesa facility looked different. Bigger, busier, filled with voices from a dozen species working together on something that had never been tried before. The Row-Cal protocol was now standard curriculum. 12 human Illyria teams trained in collaborative containment. Success rate approaching 90%. 0 fatalities. Ethan supervised the human training. Taught them what he had learned, that strength was not about never falling. It was about being willing to stand in front of someone and say, "I have got you." Maris taught the Illyrna, showed them that control was not about suppression. It was about trust, about accepting help, about being brave enough to fail in front of someone who would catch you. Together, they had built something that changed both their species. On a Tuesday afternoon, Maris was working with a new recruit, young Illyrna, nervous. The kind of nervous that could cascade into disaster. The probability field started to destabilize. Before Maris could intervene, Ethan was already moving. He walked calmly to the field, placed his scarred, trembling hands into the unstable matrix. "I have got you," he said to the panicking sorceress. "Just breathe. Let it pass through me." Maris joined him, her hands over his, guiding the probability waves while he anchored them. The field stabilized. The recruit collapsed in relief. The human anchor helped her up. They exchanged shaky smiles. First mission survived. Ethan and Maris stood together, hands still touching, watching the next generation figure out what they had discovered. "They are going to be okay," Maris said. "Yeah, they are. Because of you. Because of us." She leaned against him. He wrapped an arm around her shoulders. His hands would never fully heal. Her people would never fully understand. But here, in this moment, that did not matter. They had learned the truth that would echo across the galaxy. Power was not about never needing help. It was about being strong enough to accept it, brave enough to offer it, human enough to choose it. And sometimes, the strongest thing you could say was the simplest. "Stand behind me. I have got you. We do this together." 6 words. One promise. The foundation of everything that came after. In the observation deck, a new plaque had been installed beside the old Room 101 sign. It read, "Ro Kyle Protocol. When containment fails, trust begins." Ethan noticed it for the first time. "That is sappy," he said. "You love it," Maris countered. "Yeah, I do." Outside, the Arizona desert stretched endlessly. Red rock formations caught the afternoon light, beautiful and harsh and absolutely indifferent to the small miracles happening inside these walls. But inside, 2 people from different worlds were teaching the universe a lesson it desperately needed. That gods could learn to fall, that humans could learn to catch them, and that together they could do the impossible. One probability field at a time. One act of trust at a time. One choice to stand together when it would be easier to stand apart. Humanity did not conquer the stars through force. They did it through a simple, stubborn insistence that no one should have to face the impossible alone. And in the end, that was the most powerful magic of all. In the end, the universe didn't change because a human was stronger, smarter, or more powerful. It changed because one stubborn, painfully fragile species looked at chaos and said, "I can hold this for you." Humanity's quiet power was never control. It was choice, endurance, and the refusal to let anyone face the impossible alone, even when the price hurt like hell. So here's the real question this story leaves behind. When fear starts bending reality around you, do you tighten your grip, or do you trust someone enough to stand behind them? What part of your life are you still trying to control when what you really need is help? And if the moment came, would you step forward knowing it would cost you, just to make sure no one else fell? If this story touched something real in you, write the word anchor in the comments, so we know you stayed until the very end. Tell us which city you're watching from, because across this ridiculous infinite universe, none of us are actually watching alone. If you want more stories where humans survive not by being gods, but by being human, subscribe, like, hype, and share this with someone who needs the reminder. And don't leave yet. The next story is waiting for you in the final card on screen where the impossible is already warming up. After all, the strongest thing a human can say was never, "Watch me." It was always, "I've got you."